Fabulous. Okay,
Great.
that's terrific. So just wanted to
Thank
everybody. Yeah, it's good. It's great. Just wanted to thank everybody for showing up for our conversation today. I'm really excited to have some time together, though we may be far-flung geographically, to talk about how we work with the challenging people on our caseloads and in our programs. So you all can see the learning objectives up in front of you. We're wanting to make some space and time today to talk about what our own challenges are with the folks we're working with complex medical issues, talk about the principles and values of accompaniment, and share together some best practices for having really good working collaboration with the clients that are tricky. I want to introduce you to our Healthy Conversations behavioral health curriculum, kind of give you a tour through the tools and resources that are in there, and then give you some time to think and plan around how you might use it productively with the folks that you're working with. So that's the hopes, and we don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to try to talk quickly and clearly through what we have. So next slide. So that's actually the hello slide, radical accompaniment, welcome. Keep going. So this is how I want to spend the time. I want to do some framing around the accompaniment principles and values. I want to talk about challenges and best practices for complex care coordination, give you an overview of the curriculum, do a demonstration of some of the different kinds of tools that are in there, and then leave some time for a robust question and answer period at the end. Also, you know, as Erin mentioned, I'm happy to entertain questions, comments, and such as we go. So if there are things that come up as we're rolling, we'll have little pauses between slides so that hopefully I can speak to any questions or applications that come up as we go through this. So I personally don't really love being on a webinar. I find it really hard to manage emails coming in, text messages, people coming to my door, and my own difficulties sitting still. So just ask you to really do your best to manage distractions and to try to participate as actively as you can in making this as much of a conversation as the format will allow, and appreciate that. Next slide, please. So when I think about complex clients, I think, you know, when we were planning this, I put scare quotes around us because I think it's kind of a catchphrase for a lot of different people. I think about the clients that, for me and for the teams that I supervise, are frustrating and inspiring. The folks that impact us emotionally, that drive our passion for this work. To me, these are the folks that what I know how to do already is not sufficient, and I kind of have to keep taking my game to the next level to really be able to work with them around what their challenges are. I think of this as the clients who are stuck and often invite us to get stuck with them, and often people who are dealing with the intersection of compounding inequalities, broken systems, really difficult personal histories, all kinds of mental health and addiction issues in their families, as well as all of the complexities of the social determinants of health. And in my experience, you know, for programs that have tried to work with people with complex needs and failed, the labels come out. So, you know, you hear the stigma and the pathologizing often in blaming people for their own stuckness. And you can see the list of labels on that slide, which I'm not going to read. Next slide, please.
Julie, I'm just going to take 1 second. We did get a question from someone asking how you download the slides. So I just wanted to point out that there's a handouts pane in your webinar control panel, and you should be able, once you get in that handouts area, you can just click and download things right from there.
All right, thank you for clarifying that. The other thing I just wanted to say is I didn't actually introduce myself, and I think it helps to know, you know, who am I and why should you listen to what I have to say anyway. So my name is Julie. I'm a mental health clinician, clinical supervisor for community health programs, mostly in HIV, but also some chronic disease and mental health. So I work with teams in Boston as well as teams around the country, really looking at how do we do quality, person-centered accompaniment in a long-term, sustainable way, in a way that is cost-effective, in a way that doesn't burn out staff, and in a way that really is beneficial to complex clients. So that's my short elevator speech. So when I was thinking about, who among the people that I have worked with or supervised, are we talking about under this sort of complex label? This is just a smattering of people, and I'm not going to, tell each of their stories in any depth, but I think that when I think about the people that I've worked with and mapping out, kind of who they are, where they're coming from, what I see is really complicated, multiply compounding health issues, community issues, mental health and substance use issues, as well as incredible amounts of determination, resilience, and sort of personal resources that the person can mobilize to make progress with their health. So I think I'll just talk a little bit about the last client there who I've called Shane. So this is somebody that's been in our program for ages. He's a gay white man in his middle 40s, and is fairly stable in terms of housing and on disability, and has done a really good job with his HIV management, which is awesome. But his diabetes really tripped him up. So his diabetes has been poorly controlled upwards of 10 years. He had first a toe amputation, and then a foot, and then the other foot, and then I think both legs down below the knees. And he struggles with his weight, struggles with compulsive eating, has a lot of stuff around internalized homophobia and class issues. Feels like a failure. I think that he was supposed to be more than this, and is pretty lonely and socially isolated. So it's been really hard to work with him. Major depression, really treatment-resistant depression over a long period of time. And he's also hilarious and smart, creative, loves comic books, is a writer, a really good self-advocate, and deals with really difficult things, often with a lot of courage. But to work with him, the community health workers that have worked with him have just felt incredibly disheartened that with all of the time and care and energy, we couldn't prevent the amputations, and we haven't really been able to help him get his depression to a place where it feels well managed. So just an example to kind of give you an idea of who the folks are that I'm thinking of. Continue slides, please. So when I think about what makes folks tricky, it's as much about us as it is about them. I think when people have complex problems for which there is no easy fix, it's really hard to know what to prioritize, where to begin, how to make sense of it. And I think with people with compounding health issues, it makes the care harder to coordinate, and health can feel really hard to reach. For a lot of folks, the root causes remain in place. So, if you have somebody who's diabetic, who's homeless, and doesn't have a lot of money, the idea that they could radically change their diet and put exercise into their day and effectively manage their insulin in the face of those basic needs not being met, it's not real likely. A lot of the clients that our teams really struggle with have legitimate reasons to distrust other human beings, to distrust providers and systems of care. So often they have had boundaries violated, felt disrespected, been involved in systems like the criminal justice system that are profoundly dehumanizing. So I think a lot of the work is about how do we rebuild trust when it's been broken with folks. And I don't generally, most of the people I know who do this work don't do it because it's, really lucrative or has great job stability. We do this work because we want to help people, and we believe in them and believe in ourselves that we can do something that will make a difference. And I think when clients get stuck, or they don't progress, or they die, or they get sicker, it can trigger our own issues around feeling powerless, around wanting to help, around not knowing what to do. And, we all have our own life experiences often with these issues as well. So learning how to work with our own vulnerabilities, I think, is a really important piece of being effective, coordinating care and accompanying folks with complex issues. Next slide, please. So when I talk about accompaniment, we think about it as walking with people. So not walking in front of them and hoping they'll follow our example, and not walking behind and kind of giving somebody a little kick in the butt, but next to. And I got trained in this sort of philosophical model through my work with Partners in Health here in the U.S. and being part of the international community health worker movement. And the thing that's cool about this way of thinking is it's really versatile. So you can walk with an individual or a family, you can walk with a community, a work team. So the application is pretty broad. And our goal really is together look at barriers. So what gets in the way of someone's health and happiness, and how do we help the person use what they already know, their life experiences, their wisdom, their own resilience to meet the goals that are meaningful to them. And often those goals are small, and often they're not the goals that we would choose for the person, but that's part of the walking list. And I use the word radical in putting this presentation together, partially because I like it, but I think it really calls us each in our own way to step outside our comfort zone. So to walk with someone means we're not in charge of which road we take. We're not in charge of how steep or unsteady the terrain is. It requires a level of giving up control and being comfortable with not knowing. So one of the things I hear from providers that are more, I would say, burnt out is, well, you know, my clients know what they need to do, and I know what they need to do, and I tell them, and they don't listen to me, and they don't change. And I think a lot of the time we may know the medical information, or, you know, this is how this medication works for depression or PTSD, but we don't know what's going to work for that individual person in front of us. And so starting from a place of compassion and curiosity and being willing to learn from each person that we work with, knowing that everybody's story is unique, requires us to give up a level of expertise and be open. And I use the word radical also because I think working with people in this way, I mean, I've been doing this work going on 20 years, and I think it has a really powerful potential to heal who our clients are, but also us in the process of connecting and working together on really difficult challenges. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to belabor this too much. I've heard you guys have had some really great training on what it means to do sort of person-centered care or care coordination. To me, these are the really crucial elements, and I'll highlight just a few things. In terms of respect, the golden rule versus the platinum rule. So the golden rule is sort of the one many of us, I think, were raised with, you know, is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And what I've found over the years is a lot of times what I would want is not what my clients would want, or the staff that I supervise, or my colleagues. And so the platinum rule says, you know, learn about the people around you and do unto them as they would have done. So that may mean that we work with clients and find that what helps them stabilize and learn and grow is really different than what we might need in a similar situation. In terms of curiosity, I think that especially with long-term clients, it's really easy to think we know, you know, we've seen them fail, we've seen them succeed, we know their goals, we know their families. It's easy to get lazy and sort of say, hey, I know who this person is and what they're capable of. And I think, to me, the accompaniment model requires us to stay curious, knowing that people are growing and learning and changing all the time, and that we need to be paying attention to notice those changes and to be able to work with them. In terms of humility, I think staying teachable is one of the very best things that helps the work stay alive and continue to evolve. And to me, that's about being willing to make mistakes and acknowledge them. It's been really powerful, I think, as a supervisor and as someone that works with clients, when I do something unskillful or I drop the ball or I'm late, to be able to say, I'm really sorry I screwed that up, and I recognize the impact it's had on you, and we can do better, and I can do better. And to release some of the shame around not being perfect. So because we get better at accompanying people as we learn about them, and we get better at working with our own limitations. So let's carry on from here.
So I'm just going to jump in 1 second, Julie. We've been getting some questions about, you know, whether or not people's lines are muted. So just as a reminder, we did mute everyone's lines because it can tend to really lead to a bad sound quality if we've got a lot of feedback going on. So the way we're going to take any questions or comments, we really encourage you to put them in. You're going to need to type them into the question pane on the control panel. Thanks.
Thanks. I'll be happy to take the questions. And if you're one of the people who's checking email right now, come on back. We still want to have you with us. So I want to offer an intersectional framework. And again, this is not rocket science. Some of this is probably familiar to you, but I think putting the pieces together thoughtfully in terms of how we understand who our clients are and what's going on for them is really important. So to me, this is about a holistic view of the person. So we're not reducing people to their story or whatever their medical or mental health diagnoses are. Looking at the systemic factors, so I think one of the mistakes that's really easy to make is to assume that more is within the control of the individual than actually is the case. So looking at systemic issues like racism and sexism, like poverty, looking at policy issues and sort of how those larger factors, cultural factors, shape someone's health, their quality of life, as well as the behavioral choices they make, to me is really helpful because it helps us avoid blaming the client for things that are out of their control and to avoid blaming ourselves for not being able to change things that are much bigger and more entrenched than we are. Staying in a place of acknowledging that depression and inequality are root causes of addiction, of chronic disease, and of many mental health symptoms. And that as well is really easy to forget. And I think it's a really important ongoing awareness and acknowledgement in this work. I want to say to, when in the earlier slide when I was saying, us and them, air quotes, I find that it's most effective if we can stay in a place of seeing the common humanity. So I have, many less than perfect coping skills, as my friends and family would be happy to point out if I gave them insight, and I think our clients do as well. So that if we can have empathy and humility around the ways that we all cope in less than great ways with stress and heartbreak and illness and all the things that we deal with, it's really helpful. I think whenever possible, avoid trying to fix or save people. And some of us learn that early in our families, so it's a hard habit to break, but a really important one, I think, to be effective as a collaborator. Improving our ability to see complexity and sit with discomfort. So we are all multifaceted. And someone who, smokes crack and does sex work, it may also be a sister, a parent, a churchgoer, a neighbor, a writer, and if we focus just on one piece of someone's being, we lose a lot of the resources that may already be in place, and we lose the ability to really be a human being walking with another human being. And I think holding on to the idea that change is possible, if we lose that possibility, then it's really hard to accompany people because we just believe, we've seen it, they failed again, it's too hard. And if we've lost faith, it's really hard for our clients or consumers to continue to have faith in their future. Next slide, please. So how do we live into this? Because these are lovely ideas, right? But you're like, okay, we have time constraints, we have paperwork, we have grant requirements. I think there are some things you can put in place for yourself and for your teams that really make a difference. One is just practicing. So when you're clear about your sort of values and approaches, taking the opportunities to practice curiosity, to practice owning your mistakes, to practice acknowledging oppression and inequality is really helpful. The strong team, I think, is key. So having colleagues that you can learn from, rely on, share with, connect with, and finding role models. And that may be people you work with or people in the field, family and community as well. But I think having elders in this work, people who show us it can be done long term and all the different ways to go about it is really powerful. I think supervision is so key. Some kind of regular supervision, but especially clinical supervision. I know it's not so commonly offered outside of the mental health world. And obviously I'm biased because I offer clinical supervision, but I think for staff to have space to reflect on the complexity of their clients, their own issues, how work's affecting life, life's affecting work is so, so essential to prevent burnout and help people stay really present in their work. I think experimentation is part of it. So, you know, we learn something, we try it a little, we see how it goes, and then we go back and sort of say, hey, did that work? What could we do differently? Do we like this? Is it helpful? Was our old way better? I think ongoing training is great, and I'm really happy to be part of this series that offers that. Just because your skills get rusty, and I think it's easy to get kind of rigid and fossilized if we're not constantly stretching and shifting and learning. And I think finding resources, be that educational materials, videos, interventions, teaching tools that really are consistent with your values and your program's values is really, really important. Next slide, please. So I would love to hear from folks if you can share about any of these questions. So just wondering how this is landing with you. Love to hear if folks have any best practices that you use working with complex clients, maybe that are different than some of what I've offered so far. If you have any examples of things that you've tried that have failed and maybe why they didn't work, or anything you'd like to share about kind of what your current challenges are in the work with accompanying people with complex medical and psychosocial issues. Yeah. And you all may not be, you know, active typers, so I'm going to give you just a little window here, and if no one has anything to add, I'm going to assume you're either really feeling it or you've all gone to get coffee, and we'll come back.
Not seeing anything coming in, Julie, so.
Okay, all right, so we'll keep going, and if there are questions or comments that sort of come up in the process, just type them in, and I'm happy to receive them. Okay, thanks. So let's go on. Next slide. So I want to change gears here. So in addition to the principles, we've put together some really practical tools that I hope will be of interest. So I have worked as a clinical supervisor for many years for the PACT Project, which is an HIV care coordination program in Boston. And we got a grant in 2013 from the Blue Cross Foundation to do something concrete to work on reducing health disparities. So health disparities by race, health disparities by income, by neighborhood. So we put together a multicultural, multidisciplinary team that had everybody from psychiatrists to community health workers, and we created this behavioral health curriculum. So in terms of its roots, we're drawing on harm reduction, motivational interviewing, and some interesting stuff from holistic health. And right now, it's not being used as widely as I would like, but we have teams, community health worker teams in New York and Boston that are accompanying people living with HIV that are using the curriculum, as well as outreach workers working with folks with chronic diseases in Los Angeles, working for the county, and in a pilot program in rural Mississippi Delta, Arkansas, who are all using the curriculum, which is cool. So the goal in this thing, what we were really trying to do is help build knowledge and skills around mental health and substance use among care teams, and so that they could really educate and empower their participants around better self-management of their own issues, helping people feel more ready to access care, working with stigma, which in my opinion is one of the biggest barriers there is to folks getting the kind of care and support that they really need, and share tools from kind of more holistic health that would be useful to folks dealing with mental health, substance use, or both. So that's the overview. Next slide, please.
Julie, we did get a comment that came in about sharing some challenges. So one of the participants noticed that the biggest challenge for her is missing deadlines for grant requirements when working with complex clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for saying that. I think it's one of the really hard parts about this work is that, you know, the paperwork and the administrative things that are required to keep a program running, and the immediacy and the flexibility and the presence required to accompany clients pull us in opposite directions. And so figuring out how to juggle that, how to manage that, how to set boundaries with clients, how to set boundaries with grants, I think is is something that we all continue to live into. So I appreciate you putting that out there. So in terms of the nuts and bolts of this curriculum, you guys will get the link to download it for free, and you can use it as you like, and so that's later in the presentation, but we'll also look at some specific pieces right here on the webinar. So I want to give you an overview. So this thing has 3 tracks. It has a mental health track, a substance use track, and a dual diagnosis track. And the topics go in order. So, you know, we were thoughtful about how we put it together. There's a flow, things build on each other. But, you know, if you're working with someone who says, you know, I have anxiety and I have some issues with alcohol, you can go through and start with the anxiety chapters, and then, you know, look at the section on stages of change, and then look at the section on spiritual coping, if it's somebody who has a spiritual life that's a resource for them that they want to tap into in terms of dealing with their issues. So it is flexible. So each topic, each chapter is broken into conversations, and each conversation is sort of a blend of some educational content and activities that are interactive, and each conversation is designed to take about 20 minutes. So the way the teams that use it typically are, you know, if they were going to have a, you know, 45 minutes or an hour, either clinic visit, home visit, that about 20 minutes would be spent usually at the beginning or the end on curriculum, and everything else that happened during that time would be whatever's up for the client. So it's sort of a shared agenda. Some of the topics are priority topics and others are labeled optional. So, for example, you know, if you're working with somebody who, let's say, has depression but no substance use issues, you would skip all the substance use topics. And if you're working with someone, let's say, who uses meth, you might skip the recovery topic and focus on the topics in the substance use track that are for folks who are actively using and thinking about maybe wanting to quit at some point. So this is not a script. It's not like you read it, you memorize it, and you run your lines as if it were Shakespeare in the Park. It's really meant to be a guide and a jumping off place for conversations. So the intention is, through discussion, to help people better understand the barriers to their health so that they can tackle them, to help them get clearer about what they care about and what motivates them so that they can really draw on that in trying to make positive behavior change, and sort of a blend of reflection and action, so helping people have a little more insight, hopefully, into what they're doing and why, and how it's beneficial and not so beneficial, but also tools to support taking action around managing these issues better. And in terms of the resources, you know, they're all different types of topics, and I'm going to try to show you kind of bits and pieces of different ones. But we tried to put in metaphors and images, just because some of the stuff it's like, okay, please explain serotonin reuptake to someone who is taking meds. Not the easiest thing to do, and often not so engaging for the client. And so, so we have pictures, we have metaphors, we have just ways to take the complex material and make it a little easier to digest, especially for folks whose health literacy may not be super strong. The psychoeducation pieces are in every chapter, and again, they're meant to be small and digestible. So the stuff that's overwhelming, you know, like let's look at the different psych meds and what they're used for and what their side effects are, that's all in the appendices and meant to be a reference for you and not something to overwhelm clients with. There are a bunch of wellness activities. So I'm a movement therapist and a yoga teacher and a meditator, so I've pulled stuff, and I had a couple of colleagues who are public health people that really are experienced in the mindfulness practices. So we've tried to integrate that throughout the deal. There's some expressive art stuff, which I found some clients love, and other clients are like, you're kidding me, like put the glue stick away, and that's fine. The idea is it's sort of like a buffet, and folks can take what is delicious to them and, you know, leave the popcorn shrimp if it's not really speaking to them. There's also some really cool different kinds of planning worksheets. So around medical appointments, around medications, just like different ways to help people approach where they're stuck to see if it can help them shift. So any questions about nuts and bolts before we move into actually looking at some pieces of this thing? I was warned that that it's not likely I'll get too many questions, so I'm not going to wait. So let's carry on. So there's so much stuff in here, and if you hear some pride in my voice, I basically spent like a year and a half like regularly chained to a laptop trying to finish this monstrosity, and I have a lot of pride in how it came out. So I want to walk you through two little bits from our from mental health topics. So we'll look at a few mental health topics, a few substance use topics, and then one from the dual diagnosis track. So can we jump to the psych med chapter, the first one here? I'll just be a second while we toggle to the PDF. And there's stuff here that you can, you can download just these pieces, or if you want the whole thing, you can have the whole thing. So, well, I don't think that's the right one. So the first one I wanted to show was on psych med. So it's a section on adherence, and then, yeah, so this is great. So this is conversation, this is for the mental health track. And I think one of the things I've noticed is there's a lot of fear, resistance, misinformation, challenges around psych med adherence and taking psych meds consistently and correctly. So the teaching content here, so the way this is mapped out is for each topic we're in a conversation and sort of, you get the lay of the land here. So the goal is to dive into some more depth in terms of talking about psych meds. So the idea is the person who's working with the client would just say, hey, what do you know about adherence? And sort of reflect that back. And then the teaching content is, here are the elements of adherence. And this, if we scroll down just a little bit to where the pills are, this is pretty basic stuff, but it's surprising to me how often people get confused or overwhelmed or not really understanding. If I take a pill at 9 in the morning one day and then I take it at midnight the next day, well, that's fine. I took my pills, right? I'm on track. And so thinking about adherence and the elements of adherence is really important. So typically, you sort of review that and then talk about, why is adherence important? So, the key points are sort of there, and ideally the person who's working with the client will put them in their own words. So, talking about how it takes a while to build up enough of the chemicals in the body, and why the meds work. Can we go to the next page? So the idea too is, when you talk about adherence, I love to garden, and I think a lot of my clients, really enjoy plants as well. So this is a nice way to talk about it. So, just like with plants, you have to water them regularly. If you don't water them, they'll dry up and die. If you water them too much, they'll turn yellow and die. And if you wait too long, 1 week you water it, you wait, you miss a week. Often when you go back to water, it's too late. You've missed the window and the plant has already been damaged. Now, in some ways, thinking about taking meds, like we're the plants and the meds are water and oxygen kind of keep us steady and even. It makes the idea of, consistency, too much, too little makes some more sense. So keep scrolling down. So again, you might not cover all this content, but just talking about, what do you talk to your doctor or your clinician about, bringing your questions, talking about side effects. And let's go to the next page. So there are some prep tools that go with talking about adherence. So this is called a pre-visit form, and the idea is, if somebody sees their psychiatrist for 15 minutes, every couple of months, you want to make sure they really get what they need out of that visit. So it's planning, if the person has an ID number, what is it, who's the doctor, date, time, location, how are they going to get there, someone going with them, is interpretation needed. And then the bottom part is just this space for question and answer. So what I've seen is folks often get nervous when they go to the doctor, or uncomfortable, or you're waiting a long time, and so it can be hard to remember. What was I even here for? What was the important thing that we said we were going to, talk with my psychiatrist about? So a way that, if you're planning with someone before the appointment, to write those questions down in a space, the person can actually take the form with them if it's helpful to them to write down the answers so that they have that available. that's pre-visit. Next page. Can we go to the next page? No.
Yep.
Oh, good. Just checking. So, and this is the post-visit form. So this is the wait, shoot, I have follow-up and I can't remember what it is. So follow-up appointments, what were the key things that came up in the appointment? Were any changes made to meds? And keep scrolling down. Yeah, so we're test ordered. What were they? So you can stop. So again, for some clients, they don't need this level of prep and support, and for others, it's amazing how just having a few things, sort of doing the troubleshooting and then writing down the questions or the follow-up is really helpful. And then in terms of medication, you know, this is sort of more of the interactive activities piece. So here's another example that's in the same chapter. So the idea that people have a lot of fears around psych meds in particular, and it's really helpful to know what people's worries are and see if we can get some accurate information to address those. So, you know, you can sit with the client, that what this activity proposes is, you know, make a list of what their fears are, what they've heard that concerns them. So, you know, maybe I'll gain weight, you know, maybe I won't feel anything, maybe I won't be able to sleep, it's going to impact my appetite, whatever. So you know, write those things, put clouds around them. And then you can draw a sun that goes with it, and that would be information that might help the person shift the fear, get some different information about the fear, think a little bit differently. And often people have concerns that, you know, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm a mental health clinician, so there are medical questions that I can't answer. So often, if you write the clouds down, you can bring them to the appointment and sort of say, hey, these are the concerns that we came up with together. Let's see if we can get some better information from a professional that might help allay the fears. So that's a quick overview of one of the conversations around psych meds adherence and working with barriers. Can we jump to the next mental health topic?
So which letter at the top of the curriculum would that be, Julie? Or are we back to the PowerPoint?
No, it should be in the curriculum.
Stigma or
this
self-care?
is the part that's a little tricky to coordinate. It's on. I don't have the slide that says what the next one is.
Stigma or self-care?
No, those are both for later.
Back to this.
So yeah, if you go back to where we were in the slides, and it will say, no, in the PowerPoint.
Oh, open the PowerPoint.
Sorry, y'all. So this curriculum is like a 300-page PDF, and it's a little cumbersome to work with. So we're just doing this toggling back and forth, because I thought it was useful to see. So go up one slide. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I'm taking longer to talk this through than I thought. So go. Yeah. Well, so we'll skip the breathing activity for now. So just go to the substance use topic. Next slide. So let's look at me and my youth. So that's so this is a topic usually that you would use early on with working with someone who has issues with substance use, and it's really just a way of trying to learn about what's their relationship with the drugs, alcohol, substances that they use, and yeah, how do they feel about it, how did it start, and so forth. So did you all find that piece to bring it up?
Yep, Julie, so which one? Just let us know when we're on the right one.
No.
Can you tell me if it's stigma or self-care? Is it the stigma or the self-care?
It's not either of those. No. Yep. That one we've done. Yeah. So it shouldn't be there either.
So there's the breathing.
Yeah, which I don't think we have time to do right now. Yeah, so sorry, you all. I'm talking too much. Otherwise, we would have done. This is the one I wanted you to see. So this is an early conversation from the substance use track. So, you know, same kind of principles. If you all have had sort of any health education training, it's sort of the ask, tell, ask model. But asking permission is a super important piece of talking with folks about their use. So this is really about assessing and just finding ways to really get the nuance of what this person's relationship is with the substances that they use. So here are some open questions. And again, not rocket science. Most of you probably ask some version of these questions when you're working with people already, but it's nice to have a template to sort of jump off from. So, you know, asking people about early experiences with use, you know, how old was someone when they started? What was it like? How did it affect them? You know, what words do people use to talk about getting high so that you can talk with them in the words that feel right and comfortable to them? What do you like about your use? What drugs have you tried? What do you like best and least? Tell me about drugs and alcohol in your family. On a good day, how much do you use with who, and how does it feel, and how's that different from a bad day with using? And this is an interesting one. I've had a few people say this has opened up some good conversations. Are there fictional characters, you know, pieces of movies or songs or folks on TV that have a common experience that might give you as the accompaniment insight into what the person's drug use experience is like? So you can say, hey, play me the song or tell me about the character in the show and why you relate to her, for example. So that is lovely. I want to show you one more tool. So if we can keep scrolling down, this is from the dual diagnosis track. So yeah, we'll just keep going. Keep scrolling down. Yeah, I put more content than I can cover with you today in here. So no, I hope you can do around recovery. Keep going. No. So yeah, this is all just recovery. Okay, yeah, this is good. I'll go back up one more. So it's page 126 there. So this is from the dual diagnosis track. And so you could have this conversation with somebody about their mental health or about their substance use, or both. And so we want to understand sort of their coping behavior. And so, you know, what does the person normally do when their mental health symptoms or the desire to use come up? And then how do those choices impact the different areas of their life? So this is ideally a non-judgmental conversation that's really about mapping impact of symptoms and symptom management, or the impact of the desire to use and then potentially the use that follows. So the question would be something like, you know, when you feel depressed or anxious or like you want to get high, how do you act? And then how does that affect the different areas of your life? So can we look at the little worksheet on the next page? Yeah, so the idea is in each of these realms, you know, the person's coping behaviors have positive and negative impacts. So it may be that, you know, when they want to use, they get really connected with their friends who also use, and that's like fun and exciting and good, but that it has a really negative impact on family relationships because, you know, somebody's partner gets upset when they're at the bar really late, or, you know, they miss something that's important for their kids, and so it negatively impacts those relationships. So, you know, someone may say, my drinking has no effect on my finances, but it really affects how I'm doing at my job. Or someone might say, you know, my depression really, really impacts my health, but it doesn't really negatively impact my relationships with other people as much now. So it's just kind of a spacious way to map behaviors and effects, so the person really can kind of think a little more clearly about how their choices around their mental health and substance use are impacting their life and potentially the other areas of life that are really important to them. So let's go back to the slide. So, you know, I think one of the questions people ask in terms of the curriculum is, you know, how practically do you use it? And the recommendation is not like you bring the book and you sit with someone and you read it together, not so much. Usually what our folks do is if they want to use pieces of the curriculum, if there's an activity, they show up with supplies. If there's a worksheet, they make a copy of the worksheet and bring it on a home visit or have it ready when the client comes in. Ideally, stuff happens in a place that's private and relatively quiet. So, if I went on a home visit and there were a bunch of kids home for summer vacation, it might not be the right time to do a stress management breathing practice because there's too much else going on. But I think always asking permission, and I think you'll know with your clients, like, who wants to have a psycho-ed conversation today versus who might want to do a timeline of their substance use and how it's affected their lives, and who's going to be totally not up for most of this, and that's fine. You just want to sort of take the opportunities and offer with clients, because a lot of the time they don't realize how helpful it can be if you can bring it in skillfully and in the right moment. So I want you all to take a minute and just reflect on your own. So how does what we have been talking about today fit with what you already know about doing person-centered care? Are there specific things you could do at your site to put the principles into practice or to continue to practice them? And can you imagine using the curriculum and what might that look like in your community or with the population that you're working with? So just take a little bit of time to think about that. And I think I've been in health behavior land too long. I've gotten sold on SMART goals. So if you're willing to think about one action step that you could take around either using curriculum or practicing some of the radical accompaniment principles, I'd love for you to set a goal. So SMART goals, for folks who don't know this, it's an acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. So basically a baby step, something concrete that you would do in the next month or so to take some of this back to your workplace. So if anybody has those that they would like to share, please feel free to type them in the chat box. And if it is quiet, then just let that be something that you plan for yourself. Because I think, it's nice to sit and listen to a webinar, but hopefully it has something practical that will carry forward. And I want you to think right now for yourself what that would be. Okay. So let's go to the next slide, please. So if folks have any questions about applications or barriers that might arise in trying to use this, I'm happy to hear those or to address them.
We have one question come in, Julie. I'm going to read it out. I have a participant that I've been feeling frustrated working with because he has diabetes and is eating candy bars and is needed to rescue for falls repeatedly. This will be helpful for me to find a different approach with this participant.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think with something like that, that has a real specific hope that, you would reduce the amount of sugars that somebody's eating. I think it's really helpful to talk about the benefits of eating candy. So, to start from that place, because I think where we get stuck is that we want people to change something either that they're not ready or not willing to change, because we can see in the long term the consequences are pretty terrible. But often for the person in the short term, it would be harder to give up candy than it would be to think about, going blind in 10 years. So I might just ask him, what does he love about eating candy? How did he get started with candy? What is his favorite candy? How does it help him? What are the best things about it? And then when you feel like you have a pretty good handle on the benefits of the candy, find out a little bit more about if he has any concerns about it and what those might be. And it may be that he's willing to make other changes to his diet, but the candy will be the thing he can't give up. And so it's like, all right, let's do a little harm reduction and, switch to fun size or switch to, candy every other day as opposed to every day. But I think if we're open to the baby steps, they really do accumulate over time. thank you for raising the question. Anything else come in?
Yeah, we actually got a response back saying, I'm seeing that I've been using the wrong approach, so thank you.
Cool, that's great. I think too that what I notice is if I get a lot of resistance from someone, usually it's a clue to me that I need to change my approach. So it may be that I'm being too directive, or I'm trying to get the person to change something they're not ready to change. And so if I can back up and sort of pick a different way of working with the person, or even just say, I often will say to clients, I feel like what we've been doing together hasn't been working and you seem frustrated. How could we go about doing this differently? What do you feel like you're ready to tackle together now? And then you sort of step back into walking with someone as opposed to kind of dragging them where you want them to go, which I think is less stressful for everybody. Good. So shall we go through the rest of our slides, and if more questions come in, well, I'm happy to take them.
Yep.
So there's plenty more training happening in Vermont, which is really exciting. So I'm working with my colleague Carla at PCDC. So we'll be offering an advanced care coordination training in September in Montpelier. There'll be a training for managers and supervisors of people who do care coordination in October. And then Carla and her colleague Yael, who's awesome, will be doing a train-the-trainer around the care coordination training in November. So these are all available to you. And, what we do over in the webinar, we'll be doing much more in-depth and hopefully cool stuff in person in that advanced training. So I'd love to see some of you there. The link here for the curriculum, please download it, use it as you like, share it with people who think that it would be helpful to them. And at the bottom is my website. So I love to travel and do trainings and team retreats and all kinds of stuff. So if you would like to learn more about that or keep in touch with me, that's the way to find me. Next slide. And that is the website for PCDC, and they do both really fabulous training, and they have a lot of really interesting curriculum and healthcare related resources, most of which are free to get your hands on. So definitely check out their website as well. Yeah, so that's the, and I think this is some more detail. I don't know if someone from the Vermont team wants to talk about this last piece, and I just want to say thank you to everybody for being present. Hopefully something, that got you thinking, something you can use. And yeah, I know you have a lot to do, so it's great that you made some time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Julie. So we did have one more question/comment come in that I'm going to go ahead and read before we go to the next slide. So I love how approachable and discussion-based these tools are around what can be super sensitive topics like mental illness and substance abuse. I can't wait to read through the rest. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. I think that, to me, that's really the intention, is like, I was trained as a mental health clinician, and the idea for me of, sitting in an office doing 15-minute hours and billing insurance was never where it was at. And I feel like what I've seen in my years of community health work is there are so many people that would benefit from mental health treatment that, because of insurance issues, because of stigma, because there's a cultural mismatch between clinicians and the client population, people don't get the care they need. And so often it's case managers, peers, community health workers, outreach workers that pick up the slack. So to me, instead of saying, well, you all should just refer to clinicians, because I know people do that, and clients don't necessarily want to go see a counselor, is how do we give you better tools so that you can work with people in the trusting relationships you already have to help them feel more empowered and knowledgeable around dealing with mental health and substance use, both of which are really difficult issues that impact, the whole person's health. So I'm really glad that intention came forward in terms of, what we're up to with this curriculum. Good. Any more questions, or shall we do our wrapping up?
I have not seen any more questions at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up, but we've got a couple more minutes. Please feel free to keep putting those questions in if you have them. I do just want to know that in terms of how you can access all this information, so if you join the webinar late, there is a handout pane in your control panel where there's a number of documents uploaded in there. The PowerPoint presentation from today is in there, and that has the link written in it, as Julie noted, where you can go and download the Healthy Conversations curriculum off of PCC's website. So that's how you can access the full curriculum. So just to give a brief overview of what to look forward to next. So first of all, I just want to take another moment to thank everyone for your participation in today's webinar. We know that your time is very valuable, and I speak for the whole team when I say that we appreciate you taking the time to learn more about tools and frameworks for working with complex individuals today. So we hope that you will join us again for our next webinar in this series, which will be with the Green Mountain Self Advocates, and is on October 5th from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. The topic is facilitating inclusive training. So go ahead and mark your calendars, and we will be sending out registration to that event shortly. Next, I just want to remind you all that the sixth and final day in our 6-day core training series is coming up in September. So you can see the dates and locations up here on the slide. So the Waterbury training site will be at Waterbury State Office Complex on September 14th. Burlington at the Department of Health Cherry Street location on September 16th and 27th, and Brattleboro at the River Garden on September 28th. And then finally, we do have registration is now open for the Advanced Care Coordination Training Workshop that Julie had mentioned previously. And the focus of this workshop will be best practices for working with complex patients dealing with mental health issues, substance use, and or homelessness. We have limited spots remaining for this workshop, so if you feel like this could be useful for you in the work you do, please feel free to sign up. One clarifying point I just wanted to mention, because we've gotten a couple questions on this, attendance at the advanced workshop is not a prerequisite for attending the Train the Trainer workshop. If you have any other questions like that about the full training series, you can feel free to reach out to our wonderful Holly Stone at any time, and we'll get your questions answered as soon as we can. So I'm just going to check and see. I'm not seeing any last-minute questions coming through, so just want to thank you all for participation in today's webinar, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay, so a couple of things I think we need to work out the kinks on. So when we can play around with the controls, and that's about like, the bells and whistles of the software. Carla was, I think, in one of the messages, she said that main thing she could show us how to do it, but they were seeing everything that you had open and your emails. I'm okay, so okay. You know how to do that though? Absolutely. Okay. What was that? I was right on that part. Okay. The issue was that I was scared to go to it to close it down. Right. I didn't want to shift focus. Fine. That's why we were in the moment. Yeah. First of all, let me just say that I've been doing what you're doing for 2 years now, and I leave every webinar and like don't have a drink because it's the worst. It is. Why is this so hard? I mean, I'm just sitting here. So first of all, halfway through, I realized like, okay, because Holly actually knows how to use this. doing what you were doing, advancing slides, reading questions, blah, blah, blah. I will read the questions, not you're the one that can do that. Like, I have everything up. I'm so sorry I didn't realize to me. And yeah, so that's like a way that we can make this a little more safe for everyone, especially you. I'll handle the questions. I'll moderate. I'll, mute and unmute. I'll watch the questions and the comments. How about that? So I can manage those. It seems like as long as I'm an organizer, like what it let me do when I clicked on something, it said assign this question to me. So then I was able to answer it. So it seems like you just go in and you can have multiple organizers. We're seeing your screen, but I'm taking the questions by assigning them to myself. And I can chat here, all entire audience, or organizers and panelists only. So I can figure out how to do that so I can handle if we're talking amongst our internal team. So that's two things we can take off your plate. The sound, you got me. I'm not going to be the one to figure out, but don't you think it sounded like we could hear you?
Yeah.
We were muted, yeah. So it must have been us doing what we thought Julie was doing. Or even here. Or it could have been here. I don't, we know how that software is muted. What did you do to, I think I only muted it so I couldn't hear stuff coming through this. But I must not have, I'm just not a techie person, so I apologize. I didn't even think. What did you do to mute? You just go into your control panel?